The ancient Druids called it Samhain. Our Puritan forefathers called it All Hallows Eve. We call it Halloween. But despite the name changes over the years, the day that we celebrate has never changed. It seems that the night of October 31st is understood as the one night of the year where the barrier between our world and the world of the dead is most thin and most easily penetrated by those malevolent spirits that desire the pain, fear, and suffering of those most deserving of it. Our ancestors studied this truth and studied the signs and portents and so established rules that were meant to keep us safe. We now mostly think of them as traditions. Things like always keeping a jack-o'-lantern lit by your doorstep on Halloween night, and be sure not to eat too much candy before bed, and be sure to disguise yourself on Halloween night so that the spirits won't recognize you or take special notice of you. And of course, on that night of nights, one must always honor the spoken contract trick or treat when little ghosts or ghouls come knocking at your door. But in our modern world, it's easy to dismiss spiritual things as superstition. My story is what actually happened to a boy in a small town not far from here who ignored the rules and became a legend on Halloween night ever after. Jack Freebear was the biggest kid in town. He's nearly twice the size of any of the boys his age. Now, if he was just big, there wouldn't have been any problem. But due to an alcoholic mother and an absentee father, he had a mean streak and liked to pick on the other kids in town. Didn't matter how old they were either. 10, 11 years old, he beat up Justin Levitt, who was 16. Seemed Jack Freeburn had gotten into his head that nobody and nothing could stop him. And he was almost right. Jack started out early that Halloween afternoon, trick or treating with all the other smaller kids, even though his size and age said that he shouldn't. Townspeople agreed behind his back. For goodness sake, he didn't even have a costume, or only stick to trick or treating. It was just after the eighth little kid that he shoved over and took their bag of treats that he decided he had better go on to his next love, smashing jack o' lanterns. Kick him, punch him, it didn't matter to Jack, just so long as he was able to put the carver's work to waste by smashing it and putting out the little light inside. He'd done every house on his street. By the time it was late and he felt like he was going to settle in for a night of too much candy and TV scary movies. A chilly breeze had sprung up as Jack made his way back home down the dark tree lined street, especially dark because of Jack's handiwork with the jack o' lanterns. It was at this point something very unsettling happened. Jack passed a little snot who was dressed up as a ghost, just a white sheet taken off the bed with holes cutting out for the eyes. Jack had done this often. He snatched his sheet and threw it up in the air for the breeze to catch. But as he turned back to look at the surprised, now maybe crying little kid, there was nothing there. No one standing there. He was confused more than he was scared until the sheet drifted back down on the breeze, and instead of bunching up on the ground, it settled on a figure. The one that wasn't there. Jack shouted and his favorite curse word and stumbled back toward his house. The sheet clad figure just stood there where he was, staring back at Jack. And then suddenly the sheet collapsed and was carried by the breeze down the street. Jack looked around to see if anyone else had noticed, but no one else was close by. So Jack merely ran up the walk to his own house and made double sure that the door was shut and locked tight. It was dark inside. His mother would be out drinking all night at the bar and certainly be late stumbling home. For once he regretted her not being there. Jack immediately set to work trying to forget the incident in the street, plopping down on the couch with the TV on and a sack of candy in his lap. After 5 minutes, a knock came at his door, and of course, a chorus of small voices yelled, "Trick or treat!" Jack ignored them. He certainly wasn't going to share his own candy, and he considered whopping them and taking their treats, but then it would be too easy for a crying kid to point out the house where the kid had stolen his treats, so he just turned up the TV and ignored them. And there he sat, till the witching hour of the night, stuffing his face and watching show after show, ignoring all the trick-or-treaters that came to his door. It was about this time, when he was starting to nod off, that a particularly loud knock came to his door, followed by a faint-sounding chorus of voices. "Trick or treat!" Jack was surprised to find himself thinking, what kind of hoodlums are out trick-or-treating this time of night? He smirked. It was usually him. But it was late. Midnight, too late. The knock came again, louder, more insistent, and the voices were louder but still faint as before. "Trick or treat, trick or treat, give us something good to eat." He stepped up to the peephole and peered out, and thought he could make out one little white-clad ghost standing at his doorstep. Jack was scared now. He stepped back from the door, and boom, boom, boom! The knock was practically shook the house. The voice was still faint but clear in his ears. "Trick or treat, trick or treat, give us something good to eat. If you don't..." Boom! This time, the knock was simultaneously at the front and back door, and caused the TV and lights to go out. Well, Jack knew there was only one safe place left in his house, and that was in his bed under the covers. And Jack spent long minutes shivering there, lying, eyes squeezed shut, listening for the final knock that would certainly blow his doors down. Then, boom, 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 that knock was soft, but at his bedroom door. And this time from under his bed came, "Trick or treat, trick or treat, give us something good to eat. If you don't, we don't care. We'll come out from under here." "Ah!" Jack screamed and positively jumped from his bed to the door of his room. And from there he was running. Where to he didn't know, but he knew he had to get away. He ran out to his front door, but the knob wouldn't budge. Oh yes, he had locked it. He fumbled with the deadbolt and the chain, with hands shaking so bad he could barely do anything with them. He heard the sound of sinister, childish giggling from behind him, coming down the hall from his room. The chain wouldn't budge. And he heard the voice of his mother on the other side of the door, obviously drunk, talking to someone. "Is that little late for you to be out?" It was a voice that came from behind, breathing down his neck. "And, well, here's a king-size candy bar. Go on, have a good night, sweetie. Just happen to have it." Suddenly, the TV and lights came back on. He ran out the door and squeezed his mother tightly. He peered out over his shoulder. Jack got a glimpse of the white-cladded sheet ghost walking down the sidewalk before it stepped out into the street and faded completely in the mist. "Well, what's gotten into you?" his mother asked. And then, "I've got to lie down, it's late." And she left him, sitting there alone, shivering the rest of the night, thinking about all that had happened to him. Well, it was said that after that night, Jack had had a spiritual awakening of sorts. Folks didn't know how right they were. Jack was no longer mean, but seemed determined to win people over so that he could always be in the company of others. The greatest change could be seen in Jack on the next Halloween. Jack-o'-lanterns certainly filled his porch, and he had a costume too. The best part was trick-or-treating at Jack's house. It was guessed that he spent all the money he had working over the summer buying king-size candy bars to hand out to everyone who came to his door. He even gave doubles to those who hit his house early and circled back around for another go. You see, that was how Jack became a town legend. Every year, everyone knew the house that gave away the king-size candy bars. Jack Yusi had learned to follow the rules, and so should you.